Hi guys, Ken here from Backpacking Light, and today I want to talk about the 6 Moon Designs Lunar Solo. This is the 2018 model, which is a little heavier, but it's got that little bit thicker seal nylon polyurethane coated. Let's start with the obvious, the form factor. It's quite small and compact, so seal nylon, which means it packs up quite tight. It doesn't take a lot of volume in your backpack, and it's relatively cheap. I think in Sweden and in Europe it's I think we have it at Backpacking Light for 250 euros, and in the US I think it's about $200. It's always going to be a little bit more expensive in Europe than it is in the US. Forgot to press record. Figures. Yeah, so that was just a quick setup of the Lunar Solo. It's hard to see just how big it is, but I'll go ahead and climb in and kind of show the inside as best I can. This wasn't the best area to pitch it, but it's good enough. You know, like I said, this is the 2018 model. For reference, I'm 6'3", 210 pounds, or 190 centimeters, 93 kilos, around there somewhere, 92, 93. And I'll get in, show just how much room is in it or not in it, depending on how you see it. You can see here that I have it pitched really close to the ground, and I did that because this is usually how I have it when I'm out backpacking, because I usually use this when I'm up in the mountains. You know, when you can get 30 miles an hour wind, 15 meters per second wind, and so it's usually pitched quite tight to the ground, and in that pitch it's got excellent wind shedding possibilities, because you can pitch it, you know, much like the Trail Star, when it's got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pegs, and then you've got these 2 extra tie outs on top of that. It's surprisingly sturdy in the real shit winds. So yeah, you can pitch it higher, in which case there's even more room, but you can see that for a solo tent, the size, the amount of space that's in here is actually quite extraordinary. I usually use one more tent here, or a trekking pole there, and that's to give me more space around my face and to give it extra wind stability. Okay, so let's assume you're stuck in here and it's just really terrible weather. You got your vestibule down. You can see I've got room for my backpack inside the tent itself, and there's plenty of room here. So I'll go ahead and set up. Yes, I am one of those that uses the mini pump for my sleeping pads. Now, busted a hole in this thing. Now, what I'll say about the Lunar Solo is that it's a fantastic one-man tent. It's lightweight, it takes little space in your backpack. It's got enough room even for somebody as big as myself. So I would say that, you know, 190 centimeters is probably the limit. You might be able to get a little bit taller in here, but you probably wouldn't want to. It has great condensation control, or at least as good as any tent. You know, considerably better if you actually have it open like this. If it's raining, just like any tent, it doesn't matter, you're going to get condensation in here. But I will say that on this tent, like a lot of the 6 Moon designs, is that you know, the stitching and the overall construction is probably not going to be on par with something that's twice as expensive. You know, much like in the Lunar Duo that I had a problem with on the construction, this one, while it is constructed better, it does use better materials, and it does have better reinforcements on the parts that you need reinforcements. It's still, instead of using something like X-Pack or, you know, even this kind of material on, for example, up here at the very top, I would be a little worried about that opening up. So I would say, like, the very first thing you do when you buy the tent is to seam seal it and keep a tube of seam sealer with you, because there's a high probability that the stitching, especially just right here, will probably leak. And if you make it too tight, it'll probably rip. But if you use seam sealer in there, then it has then it should be strong enough to where it won't rip and tear. So that's definitely something I would look at. Otherwise, I would say that the 2018 model of the Lunar Solo uses better overall materials than the 2017 model, production model. It just that, you know, this seal nylon is just a much better quality. You can feel that. It, you know, it does come at a cost of it being a little heavier. I think that's worth it. This is going to last longer than some of your other really lightweight seal nylon tents. Yeah. So the tent, this part is 20 denier seal nylon polyurethane coated. So it's actually a pretty nice material. And the floor is 40 denier. A lot of people want to talk about the waterproofness of the tents. But you know, if you look at the outer material here, you have to kind of know what you're talking about when you're asking the question, what is the waterproofness? You know, people say, oh, well, it's 3,000 millimeters. And well, what does that mean? And you know, honestly, you could pretty much have a tent, the outer material could be like 50 millimeters, and you'd be just fine. And because how it measures is what matters. And so if you look at the 3,000, what they're measuring is you have a tube, a pressure tube, you put water in it, and they're putting pressure, the air pressure, pushing that down. At what point does that pressure make the water start to seep through the material? So it's not a real life test. So on the outer material, you know, the waterproofness is kind of a ridiculous discussion, because any material will pretty much hold up to waterproofness as long as it's seam sealed and tight. Of course, you know, if it's non-stop raining for 3 or 4 days, then of course it's going to start leaking if it's something like 50. But I've never had problems as far as the waterproofness on these. Where it does matter is on the floor, because that's where you're actually putting weight onto the ground between yourself and the ground, and that can push it. The water starts to seep through the tent floor. Now this one actually has a pretty good floor on it, but a lot of lightweight tents, they do allow water to seep through. So general prescription on any tent really is to just not pitch your tent on a lake. Try to find a relatively dry area. And even if it's been raining a lot, you can usually find areas that are better situated having a tent on than other areas. The nice thing about the Lunar Solo is that you can put the vestibule down from the inside. No. Yeah. So there you have it. The Six Moon Designs Lunar Solo. A relatively cheap one-man tent that weighs 760 grams. And you know, uses your trekking pole. Of course you can buy a separate pole, but you can never expect a carbon fiber pole to hold up like a trekking pole would. Yeah, not much more to say there. It's a good tent. It should last you a few seasons. It'll get you through a through hike, and yeah, I can recommend the Lunar Solo. And it packs small.